So, welcome to the Singing Social. Today we've got Claire Evans, who is singing teacher extraordinaire up in Scotland. Would that be fair to say, Claire?
Well, it depends on your definition of extraordinaire. There are not as many of us up here, so I suppose we're all a bit extraordinaire up here. So yeah, I'll take it.
Great. So, we have not seen each other for such a long time. We were just saying how long it's been because we studied together, didn't we?
Yeah, we did our undergraduate together. I was one of the older people in the class because I'd already been at university for a while. And yeah, we were all young, fresh-faced, innocent.
Yeah, thinking we were destined for Covent Garden and La Scala.
I never thought that. All right.
Sure, we all did. But so to be clear, this was at what was the Royal Scottish Academy of Music and Drama, which is now RSC,
RCS,
RCS.
of Scotland.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
It's confusing. Yeah, it
very
was.
confusing. And I still can only think of it as RSMD. Cannot think of it as anything else. Yeah.
Or the academy. I've learned to start calling it the conservatoire now because I've had a few pupils go there to do the juniors and to do musical theatre and stuff like that. So they refer to it all the time as the conservatoire, which to me just sounds so much more exclusive than the academy. But
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Or Razmadad, as some people also called it. It's also a good name. Okay, so tell me how you got into singing in the first place. When did you start your singing lessons and how did you come to the realization that you could sing?
I think for I'm the same as most people in that I was in a musical family and singing was in the house. My parents both sang in amateur choirs at quite a high level, and they did sort of chamber stuff and Bach stuff when they were students. They didn't study music, but I think they probably could have done if they'd wanted to. And so music was in the house. I had piano lessons, and when I went to school, I got clarinet lessons and singing lessons, and they were free at school. So my first singing lessons were free all the way through high school. I liked singing, and I went away and went to the Strathclyde Schools Chorus when I was about 13, and that was my first experience of a big choir that could actually sing harmonies and sing nicely and sing something more than some kind of pop medley that was not really written for choirs or all that kind of stuff. So I got a bigger experience of large scale music as a whole, and I loved that. And that led on to me joining NICOS, the National Youth Choir of Scotland, and that is probably when I started to think, oh, I'm quite good at this because all my friends, a lot of my friends who were at NICOS were planning to be singers and were going to go and study at the RSMD or in London or something. I wasn't. I was doing medicine at the time. I was a medical student, but I was occasionally getting solos and things and being put into
Yeah.
chamber groups and auditioning for things and getting them over people who were possibly going to go and sing. And I thought, oh
Oh,
well,
okay.
and then I started to become less happy with the idea of a career in medicine as well. I hadn't really, I mean, I was 17 when I went to uni, so I hadn't really thought it through. I liked people and I liked science, but I didn't really like having to force them together into this sort of high pressure life or death situation. So, and I found that at university when I was studying medicine, I didn't have as much time to do music as I wanted, and I felt like I was really missing it.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually, I dropped out of medical things and went and did music instead, which was a bit scary. But to me at the time, it was less scary than being stuck in a job that I didn't want. And I knew quite a lot of doctors at the time. I sang in the RSNO chorus at the time as well, which had obviously all people of all age groups and all careers singing at a very high level. And quite a few of them were doctors, and they were like, "Oh, you're so lucky." When I said I'd dropped out to go and do music, and I went, "Yeah, but I'm going to be penniless. I'm going to be struggling artist for the rest of my life." And they said,
Yeah.
"Yeah,
But when you think about it now, you are actually doing science and being a people person and then putting it together.
yeah." I'm loving it much more now, and I am getting far more into the geeky side of things now that my family are a little bit older. Because when I started teaching, my eldest was very young, and I was pregnant with the second one, I think. And so I kind of had to dip in and out of teaching and sort of learn as I go. But now I've got a bit more time on my hands. I'm studying a bit more and reading a bit more and trying to do courses online if I get the chance.
Yeah.
Because I've always been quite geeky about the science stuff. I love
Yeah.
the side of things and even the physics of it and stuff like that. I
Yeah,
love.
and there is so much out there. There are so many courses to go. You could literally go in a course every day of the week for the next year and still actually not know everything, because things develop, the science is developing and all of that. So much so that even when we were at RSAMD, it's changed dramatically since then, don't you think?
Hugely. I think there's quite a lot of stuff that is still a sort of a core of information that is still accepted, but it's been developed so much more since then. And yeah, you're right. A lot of stuff has completely changed. A lot of stuff is really not thought of as best practice anymore. So it's interesting though, because I don't know about you, but I find that the more I learn about it and the more I read, the more I feel like I'm a tiny little guppy in a massive sea who doesn't know anything. So you feel quite confident when you're teaching and you feel like you know what you're doing and you feel like you can recommend yourself to people. And then you go and speak to other people who are, really studying the details of it and you go,
Yeah.
whoa, I don't know anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So back when we were being taught, it was all, I mean, we still use loads of imagery now and all of that, and that's still a massive thing, but it was pretty much based entirely on imagery, wasn't it? And I often felt that you couldn't quite ask a question as to, so what's the thinking behind that? Why are we doing this, physically? Because obviously we can't see our instrument. But that was not really a thing back then, was it? But now I feel like you have to back up all of your imagery with the actual science of what you're trying to achieve.
I think I was quite lucky in that because I was coming from a science and medical background and my teacher knew that. Oh, and I also had a random term studying musical theatre before I came to the academy. More on that later. Actually, no more on that. I had already started to think about vocal anatomy in those terms, and so I did mention it, and they knew that I was interested in that kind of stuff. And my teacher was knowledgeable enough for me to say, yes, this is this and this is this. She didn't particularly teach with that knowledge, but
Yeah.
she did answer my questions. And looking back as well, a lot of stuff that I did at the time, not knowing why I was doing it, I now look back on and go, oh, that's why.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
I would have liked to know at the time, and she did tell me quite a lot of it, but obviously, as we've heard, it's a massive sea of information. So, I know that she was working from very similar foundations, but obviously she didn't have the time to like lecture me on it.
Yeah.
I kind of wish that we'd had a bit more of that kind of hands-on science as part of
Yeah.
the.
I mean, I might be wrong in this, but I don't recall actually having been taught any of that. Now, I might have just been in the student fog, I don't know. But I can't remember us learning about the actual anatomy of our voices, and I also can't remember us being taught how to teach singing.
We had one class called Techniques of Teaching that I really loved. I felt like I geeked out about it quite a lot. I can't remember. I remember it was a lot to do with vowel formation and acoustical changes to the vowels. I mean, not we weren't necessarily told it in those terms, but I remember
Yeah, yeah,
stuff that we learned, and I remember it having an impact because I was like, oh. And as usual, I learned more about my own singing while learning about teaching.
yeah,
I don't know what you find, but I feel like I've taught myself much more about my own singing
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
through trying to help other people, through trying to work out how things work.
yeah. Even sometimes I've thought to myself, right, okay, I'm going to put half an hour aside to just actually give myself a singing lesson and actually apply some of the things that I tell people day in, day out, that's in my own singing, just, goes like this. And also things that you can perhaps do naturally yourself, and then you have to break it down and figure out how to tell somebody else how to do that particular thing that you have never thought about in your entire life. You just do it like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Although I don't know if it because I came from a really strict choral background. I know you came from choirs and stuff as well, but at the time that I was away to college, Nikos hadn't really blossomed into the very full voiced sound that it is now. It was still very much sort of.
Strained.
I mean, we weren't told to sing it straight, but we were kind of encouraged to make it pure. and all those kind of things. And you know, the way that people were chosen to be in sections, that the warmer voices tended to be on lower parts, so they didn't stick out. And so this kind of light white tone was, you know, more of the product. It was changing at the time, which was good, and it has changed a lot more now. It's a huge sound they make now. But so I felt like when I got to the academy, I came with that sort of Purcellian soubrette boy kind of tone, and I don't feel like I got a lot of encouragement in developing that. And actually, what it meant for me was that my voice was underdeveloped because I was singing like a much younger person. And so I think a lot of the stuff I needed at the time I didn't get. So by the time I finished my 4 years, I would not have been able to do a postgrad anywhere. I wasn't ready to go and sing anywhere because I wasn't actually ready. I didn't know enough. I wasn't singing in the way. And so I've had to struggle to sort of catch up that stuff and learn it myself. So, but it's good though, because a lot of people come to me with the same issues, with the same total hang-ups. And
so do you find that those people that come to you with that particular issue, do you find that sometimes there's a slight kind of mental challenge to kind of to get them to want to develop their sounds?
And I totally understand that, because I was exactly the same. What I remember saying to someone, I only have vibrato in my voice at the end of a phrase when I'm running out of breath, which to me smacks of a lack of control. So why would I want to put that in the rest of my sound? I remember saying that to someone, but looking back on it now, I know I was absolutely tanking and so full of air that I couldn't actually release properly. And so it was all pressed and driven, and there was no warmth and no colour. And as soon as I started to release some of that towards the end of the phrase, then it got better. But but nobody fixed that. Nobody told me that. So it's good. So I come with I know what the bias is. I understand it. And that means that I can help people through that mental that there might be.
So do you teach a kind of a mixture of classical and musical theatre and just go fluid through all of the repertoire?
Yeah, I think I would say probably, 80% of the stuff I do now is musical theatre, because that tends to be what people want, and because I volunteer with a local theatre group. I am learning so much more about musical theatre and spending so much time with that, but also sending pupils to the local theatre group to get experience, and having people from the theatre group come to me for lessons because they see me as the ensemble coach or the vocal coach or something, so they seek me out for lessons. And because musical theatre was my first love, so
Ditto.
and that's what I wanted to go and do. I originally went to the academy thinking I'll do an undergraduate degree first and then I'll go and do musical theatre. And it just didn't happen. I got totally derailed and totally demotivated and lost all interest and went off and got a job and had babies. But I still love it. So having come back to it, but having missed out a great deal of my 20s, I am discovering and sending people towards parts that suit them and having to find out about repertoire and all this kind of stuff. But my teaching, because I've been classical background coming back to musical theatre, a lot of my issues with musical theatre, the things that make it difficult, are the same issues that kids come with, treble voices, and the same issues that people who've had classical singing lessons at school come with. So I feel like I can help them with a lot of that stuff, because it's exactly the same stuff I had to get over so that I didn't sound like a crossover artist. Because if there's anything I hate, it's people singing the wrong repertoire for their voice and not adjusting their voice accordingly. It's like choralized pop music, where people are singing it like they're in a classical choir, and like, no. Yes, sing it, but sing it with the style it was written for. And the same the other way as well. Don't be a pop star and sing opera. Like, sing anything you want, but try and from a teaching point of view, I find that switching genres all the time is hugely beneficial for your voice. I know it's probably controversial, but I love the sort of athletic gymnastics you have to go through to be able to switch your voice from one thing to the other. And I definitely feel that that's improved my classical singing by singing musical theatre. So I don't know if there's any evidence to back that up, but I definitely feel it anecdotally that people who sing different stuff, and I think that's why exams tend to be a range of things as well, is to
Yeah,
show.
that's right. Yeah, yeah,
And you would never go into a music festival and sing two songs very similar because it doesn't show off enough. And we think of that as a sort of display point of view, but it's also a teaching point of view that if you only sing things that are the same and they're comfortable all the time, you're never actually stretching your boundaries, you're never actually developing. And so if you extend that to going from one genre to another, you're just pushing it even more. So no, I've loved it. I love doing musical theatre with people. I think it's easier for people to connect with the text straight away because it's a bit more accessible for a lot of
it is
people.
a bit more accessible, and then you can go off into little side avenues of different types of repertoire that are kind of similar but pushing them just a little bit further in a different direction. Yeah. What is the youngest age that you teach singing lessons to? Because I get asked this perhaps about 3 times a week. What age should somebody be when they start singing lessons?
Yeah, and I watched one of your previous episodes, your first interview on this, and I was kind of the same opinion as your first guest in that I think a lot of the things you need to be a good singer, you learn better in a choir when you're younger. Musicianship and listening skills and pitching and articulation and all these kind of
Yeah,
things,
absolutely. Yeah.
milestones towards singing. I have taught people as young as 9 or 10, but I tend to say to people when you start high school, it's a good time to start adding things in, before you get to the examinations that come later on. So you get a couple of years of lessons in before you have to be sitting exams. But if you're younger than that, be in something, be in a choir, be having piano lessons, be doing something, laying the groundwork elsewhere. Um, but if they're not doing any of those things and they still want lessons, I'm happy to teach them as young as about 9. But I do warn the parents, it's a very expensive way to spend half an hour compared to what you get for your money if you send them to
Yeah,
a class.
you've got to be honest, haven't you? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Again, it's to
Just
take money and run, but still.
I'm going to ask you one more thing. How do you look after your voice when you've been having a whole day of teaching, or you've done a heck of a lot of teaching and you've been demonstrating this, that, and the other? You've been demonstrating the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between.
Um, I'm not sure that I do, if I'm honest. I think I need to practice what I preach a little bit more. I did the vocal health first aid course recently, which I loved, and it was great to consolidate some of the stuff that we know and learn a little bit more and network into a few more kind of areas of learning. But I'm pretty sure I don't look after my voice, and so I try and limit my teaching to about 5 hours maximum in a day
Is
because
that 5 hours without a break?
sometimes it shouldn't be, and that is part of the practice what I preach thing. I should have gaps in between where I'm stopping, but because of the, I mean, you know what it's like if you have a family as well. I'm trying to
Yeah, I
teach
know. Yeah,
as little as possible when they're here, but most people
yeah,
want things after school.
I
So
know. It's the absolute, and the golden time is between 3:30 and 6:30, and that's exactly the time when your children need you. Yeah,
so
that's really hard.
I do try and squeeze it all together for the sake of organisation, but I don't start till later in the day. So I try and make sure I warm up every morning. I do try and stay hydrated, although I'm not very good at that either. Um, I what else do I do? Probably not very much. I'm trying
Yeah.
not to yell at my laptop as much. I don't know if you find that teaching on Zoom, you
Oh yeah, I'm like this,
and you're and you're
shouting.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely compensating. Because I think, oh, this is not as good, so I need to give 10 million times more. Yeah.
I do try and move around a little bit. I'm in a swingy chair, which was actually advised to me by an osteopath friend of mine. And he said swingy chairs are good. They don't cost as much as really fancy chairs, and they do the same thing. And he basically said you need to listen to your body. If you need to fidget, fidget. If you need to get up and walk around, get up and walk around. If you feel like sitting like this to teach for a while, then do that because it's your body's way of telling you that you need to move. And I think if your whole body feels less tense, then your voice tends to feel a bit healthier as well. And all the normal, don't smoke, get lots of sleep, all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty good with that kind of thing, but um, I don't think I do look after my voice very
Yeah.
well.
I know. Do you know, it's all the practicalities, isn't it? Like, I know for like on a Wednesday. So I teach at Imperial. So I've got to get on a train. I'm like, you know, I've got 10 minutes to get there. And the lesson starts in 10 minutes. I don't have time to start warming up before I get there. You know, it's
I
but yeah,
sometimes find I need to rehearsal if I'm actually working and I have to get to London for an afternoon rehearsal. So I get the train or fly down in the morning and get on the tube. And the only time I have to warm up is walking from the tube to the rehearsal. And I find myself going, making
what you do.
obsessed pigeon noises on the
Yeah,
way.
joining in with the pigeons. Yeah, yeah. It's not. Or going when there used to be phone boxes, going in a phone box, picking up the phone and going down the phone, you know, pretending you're like having a mental conversation with somebody. And then just put the phone down and walk out, you know.
No, I never got that far.
I also had a friend that used to she used to sing into a pillow. She used to like literally put a face in a pillow and go
Yeah.
listen to this pillow.
If we're on tour and we're in a hotel and the only place we can warm up in is a hotel, and I feel so sorry for the other occupants of the hotel because the band are warming up
Yeah,
and singers are warming up, the soloists are warming up, and the whole hotel is like ringing, and I get really self-conscious because I think if I can hear them, they'll hear
yeah.
me. So face in a pillow and I just say I'm going to go and scream into a pillow for a bit, but that's my code for warm up.
Oh, well, lovely to chat to you, Claire. Thanks so much for giving up your time and giving us a little bit of insight into your teaching life. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. It's cool. Can't wait to see it.
Okie dokie. Bye.